Howdy y'all, welcome back. With all the unrest going on in the world today, I wanted to give my thoughts and prayers to those who are fighting overseas and those in both Ukraine and Russia. I wanted to dive back into our Old World series of videos where we focus on the oldest and most important cities from around the world. I wanted to create this video to try to take a deeper look at the vast and complicated history of Kiev, Ukraine. In my last few videos, we have focused on the likes of ancient mounds in America, as well as documented ancient mounds being found nearly everywhere worldwide. I believe a video I was watching recently by the Mind Unveiled channel adequately addresses the topics of ancient Tartary, and how that kingdom itself, as well as many other kingdoms, seem to have their roots deeply ingrained in Nordic or Finnic cultures. What we do know is there was at some point a cataclysm of an astounding nature. Historically and biblically, we can see the evidence of repeated cataclysms throughout time, and that is abundant. Our real questions become, when was the last true cataclysm? Where did it occur? Who or what group of people were in power before the cataclysm? What about after the cataclysm? And finally, if the evidence of the cataclysm is really some sort of esoteric hidden knowledge, do we believe that those secret societies which influence the greater scope of the world have any sort of idea about this previous cataclysm or what is next to come? Kiev is the largest city and the capital of Ukraine, as well as being the historic capital of Kievan Rus. Kiev celebrates its official founding date as the year 482. However, the city itself may date back well over 2,000 years, as archaeological records indicate a settlement in the area of Kiev since at least 25,000 years BC. Now, I'm going to provide the dates given in this narrative. However, as you and I are both well aware, many times the dates are convoluted throughout time just to fit the narrative. I do believe we have a few gaping facts presented in this history, which will help us tie Kiev to the greater worldwide ancient civilization that once seemed to abound the earth. First, legend states that the three brothers, Kaya, Shlek, and Korov, and their sister, Libid, founded the city of Kiev. The exact date or even the exact century of this discovery and creation of the city is unknown. However, the name Kiev is said to derive from Kaya, the oldest of the siblings. And even more lore surrounding the city, legend says that in roughly 60 AD, Saint Andrew prophesied the emergence of a great city on the hilly shores of the Dnieper River, where Kiev sits today. Foreshadowing or casually hiding the truth in plain sight? You decide. The narrative continues by telling us that Kiev existed since at least the 6th century as a major Slavic settlement. We also have references here that Kiev was either a Swedish or a Nordic settlement, or possibly Hungarian, with some historians pointing to the Magyar origin of many of the location names. The true first inhabitants of Kiev are apparently unknown. That's quite convenient for our history, right? Kiev quickly grew into the center of the Eastern Slavic civilization, reaching its golden age, so to speak, between the 10th and 12th centuries. As for over 200 years, it was the heart of Kievan Rus, that is, until another, more powerful, more advanced kingdom would come along. Excuse my pronunciation on this next part of the video, but I'm going to give it a shot because these are some very Russian and Ukrainian sounding names, ones that I've never read before in my life. So here we go, but stick with me because if you get the idea behind what I'm trying to say here, hopefully it will open your eyes up to the bigger picture. Andrey Bogolyubsky, also known as the Scythian Caesar, is probably the most important character that we will discuss in this video. As you have seen, I will be showcasing the oldest photographs of Kiev I could find in the background of this video, but not speaking any Russian myself, it was difficult for me to locate as many photographs from pre-1900 as I wanted to. That being said, diving back into the history of this Scythian Caesar, we have a character which I full-heartedly believe we need to do more research on. From this brief narrative, Andrey Bogolyubsky was born in the year 1111 from a Greek mother, and his father was Yuri Dolgoruki, one of the crown princes of the Rorik dynasty. If you're unfamiliar, from what we are told in the mainstream narrative, the Rorik dynasty was opposed to the Golden Horde and the Mongol invasion of Russia. Essentially, most mainstream histories give the Rorik dynasty much credit with creating the heart of the Russia that we see today, developing the castles, the towns, the borders. Many of the city names can also be attributed to the Rorik dynasty. And the cultural heritage of Russia, while it is very much a melting pot, seems to shine a brighter light on the Rorik dynasty than most other ancient cultures found in that area. Now, I'm no master of language, but tying this back to the Scythian Caesar, his father's surname is Dolgoruki. This has hints of an Asiatic or Mongolian influence, does it not? And this was the last name of the Prince of Rorik. Hopefully you see where I'm going here. To me, it appears at some point, and also if you have watched Mind Unveiled's video, this will make more sense. At some point, we have an intermingling between two vastly different cultures, which in return created this Rorik dynasty of Russia. Some will argue with great detail that the ancient Romans, who arose from the Greeks, who arose from the Phoenicians, that the very root word, Phoenician, gives indication to the true nature of the earliest advanced people. And this has been confusing for quite some time now. Phoenician is another name, according to some scholars, for Phoenician, as in Finn, or the Finns, the ancient name for the seafaring Nordic people. Now, there is little we can do but travel through time to prove these claims to be true, but again, we do see in this narrative about Kiev a Scythian prince known as one of the fathers of Russia, essentially wiping out the city of Kiev in the year 1169. So just to recap, Kiev was a massive Slavic settlement since roughly the year 500 until Andrey Bogolyubsky was born in 1111. In the year of 1155, at the age of 44, Andrey left his homeland to head to Vladimir, where he became prince following his father's passing. His heritage was a combination of ancient Aryan, Greek, Roman, possibly the true Tartary, Celtic, and a mix of seemingly Mongolian or another Asiatic country, which appears to be what modern historians describe today as Tartarian. In 1162, Andrey attempted to unite the greater empire of Rus. However, the smaller kingdoms refused. For nearly a decade, at over 50 years of age, the Scythian Caesar would conduct complex military games, bringing the kingdoms who refused his rule to their knees before they would finally break and join his larger command. The final straw in his cap, so to speak, was Kiev, where in the year 1169, at the age of 58, Andrey laid complete siege to the city. The entirety of the town was said to be destroyed. The relics of the past, including some of the most famous artworks in the entire world at the time, were plundered or destroyed, including the Byzantine Mother of God icon. Now let's talk convoluted history, just for the sake of convoluted history. After Andrey Bogolyubsky gained control of the city in 1169, apparently for the Rorik dynasty, that same Rorik dynasty in Kiev and nearly all other locations in modern Russia were then overtaken by the Golden Horde. In Kiev, this happened in the year 1241. This Mongol invasion would lead Mongolian Tartary to be one of, if not the largest country to have ever existed in all of history. Just look at the maps from the 1400s through the 1600s. It's hard to find a map that doesn't have Tartary labeled, and it's hard to find a map that shows any other single country even close to as big as Tartary. So what happened? Why don't the current narrative timelines and the official maps line up? We see Tartary on maps as late as the 1700s, yet we are told for the most part, while smaller Tartarian hordes would often ransack cities, the idea of a unified Tartary was dead by the year 1400. So why is a unified Tartary being depicted on nearly all major maps well past this time? According to the narrative of Kiev, we are told in the year 1245, just 4 years after the Golden Horde arrived in Kiev, Petro Akarovich went to the First Council of Lyon to report the danger of the Tartarian nation in Kiev. The Roman Catholic Church quickly responded. The Roman Catholic Church sent a Greek man by the name of Maximus to try and regain control of Kiev. He did not succeed. Instead, in 1299, he moved the capital from Kiev to Vladimir. "21 years later, the Catholic Church had still not been back to Kiev. That is, until Henry, a Dominican, arrived to Kiev in 1320 to become the first bishop of Kiev. Henry quickly requested assistance to defeat the Golden Horde. However, his request for help somehow resulted in a battle between a Slavic army organized by Stanislav of Kiev against an army of Lithuanian freedom fighters led by Gediminas, the Grand Duke. The Slavic army lost, and Lithuania now gained control of the land of Kiev, agreeing to repeatedly pay tribute to the Tartarian kings. After the Battle of Blue Waters in 1362, Kiev became part of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania when the Golden Horde was completely defeated in the area. From 1362 through 1471, Kiev, the castle, and the kingdom were ruled by Lithuanian princes from a slew of different royal families. In 1482, Kiev was completely destroyed again by a calculated attack by Crimean Tartars. In 1494, Kiev gained more autonomy, gradually increasing to a full territory under the crown of Poland in 1569, following the Union of Lublin. Kiev became an important center for Polish policies and rule. However, by 1632, there was already much talk of uprising amongst the Cossacks and the Tartars and other formerly native populations to the area. In 1648, Cossacks overtook the city, however they were quickly dispelled. Their ideas lived on. In 1654, a treaty was signed granting military troops to the Tsardom of Russia to fight against the Polish crown. After a series of conflicts and treaties, which were often broken, in the year of 1667 on January 31st, the Truce of Androsova was signed. This, on paper, ceded Kiev to the Tsardom of Russia. However, conflict continued until the Eternal Peace of 1686, which granted Kiev full freedom from Poland. While Kiev grew more powerful for the next century, having gained much autonomy, this was quickly brought to a halt by everyone's favorite character, Catherine the Great, who abolished all of Kiev's freedoms from Russian rule in the year 1775. From here, we get into modern history, so I will leave the video at that. Obviously, in the last 250 years into modern times, we have even more influential events that shaped Kiev. But I wanted to focus on, in this video today, the ancient origins of this most important city. A city that we are in fear of losing today. With everything that's going on in the world, I know we like to focus on the ancient and the old world, the forgotten history, to try and decipher the causes for the atmosphere that we see politically today. But I believe that Kiev, with its vast history, not only points us in the direction of this ancient Tartarian empire, but it also gives us a framework behind the empire. And it's part of the reason I believe this city has been targeted so much throughout history. I believe these ancient ruins, which must line the infrastructure under Kiev, have more information and more secrets than I had the capacity to share with you in this video. I just hope I was able to scratch the surface and open your mind a bit to show you some unique photographs of a city with a history that is as important as any in mankind. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear what stood out to you about the early narrative of Kiev or any of the photographs within the video. Please hit the comment section down below so we can share these ideas. Hit the thumbs up button, as it means the world to me and really helps me to have this channel continue to grow. And please consider subscribing to the channel. I want to give a continued shout out to all my supporters on the channel. This month, Scott Wynn, Jose Corral, Logan Roth, and William Steiner. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you all for being here today with me on this video. Let me know your thoughts and your ideas down below, and I will talk to you very soon on the next one.